Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast. This episode is with friend of the show, I think it's fair to say, Matt Ferrell. Just to explain to people who don't know Matt's channel, Matt has a YouTube channel, phenomenally successful, called Undecided with Matt Ferrell, and he's very clever, and he does proper research into new technologies, very much linked to renewable energy and sustainable technology. And so it's always a real joy to talk to Matt. He has appeared at our Everything Electric shows, and he will be appearing at the Everything Electric show that is coming up in Vancouver in early September. So that is worth checking out, because a lot of the projects and topics and notions that we talk about in this episode will be on display in Canada, and after that a lot of similar products and ideas will be on display in Farnborough at our big UK show, which is in the beginning of October. Very exciting. And then if you're down under, a lot of that technology and ideas and also electric vehicles, of course, will be at our show in Sydney in March next year. There we go. Done all the plugging for all the different live shows we're doing. In between now and then, there's going to be a lot of episodes of the Fully Charged Show and the Everything Electric Show. But in the meantime, please welcome to the Fully Charged Show podcast, Matt Ferrell. Matt, so good to see you. And I just wanted to say to our lovely audience that we basically started talking about really interesting things immediately you appeared on my screen. And so I thought we must record that. But no, just quickly take me through that, because that's my biggest jealousy of all the things you've done with your house is ground source heating. Mm-hmm. And because of a neighbour of mine who was ex oil and gas, he was an engineer working in the oil industry. So he drilled a ridiculously deep hole in his front garden in a Cotswold village not far from where I live. But he can't deal with the heat that he's getting. He has to waste it, basically, because it's just too much. What should have happened is they should have used it to heat numerous houses in the village, which there wasn't planned to do. But it's, we're talking houses that are, some of them built in 1400. I mean, they're quite old. So, putting in pipes and things. Anyway, but just quickly tell me about the fantastic image of the huge drilling rig right next to your house. So you went straight down. You didn't
straight down. For the size of our house and the efficiency of the house, we only needed one well drilled that went down 400 feet. And that was it. So it's a 400-foot deep loop that comes into the house. And we've been here for like 11 months now. So we've gone through the winter. We're in the peak of summer right now. And it's handling everything like a champ. It's incredible. And the funniest part was having the drill in our yard, the video that you're talking about. Yeah. One of our neighbors saw that and was like, what are they doing? And then they got geothermal because they saw us drilling a well. And so they ended up getting it. It's really kind of funny.
I just would love to have been there if you'd said, oh, we're just fracking. See how they responded to that.
Yeah.
But isn't that extraordinary that how similar a lot of the technologies? I mean, there's another thing. We actually had a meeting this morning with a company that's making really big grid level flow batteries, and we're going to be filming them later in this year. But they've located their main factory in an area where there were really a lot of oil and gas workers in the north of England and in Scotland, because they're really good, big, heavy engineers. They're really good at building big, tough stuff that doesn't fall over in the wind.
These skills
so
are
they're all working on.
It
is. And I mean, presumably that drilling rig is not a million miles away from a fracking drilling rig. I mean, it's probably not as big. It doesn't go as deep, but the basic technology is you drill a big hole.
Yeah, for us, the company that did it, they mainly do well drilling. So some people get just water wells for their homes.
Right.
That's where their bulk of their business comes from, but they're doing more and more geothermal wells because they already have the tools, the skills. It's the same exact thing.
Yeah. Because it makes the most sense. There was a project, I bet you'll know about it, but there was a project to do, and it sounded a little bit science fiction-y, of really deep well drilling at locations where there was already like an existing gas peaker plant or a coal plant, that they would drill there because the grid infrastructure was already there. You wouldn't have to build anything new. You just replace oil and gas with hot lava coming out of the ground. But I don't know if they've actually done it, because it wasn't a spinning drill, because you couldn't send one down that deep. It was some other technology. Forgotten.
I think you're talking about Quaise. I think that's the company.
Quaise Energy.
They basically have, I refer to it as a death ray. They're just shooting into the ground. Yes. It's a really fascinating technology. And they are doing it where the infrastructure is already in place, which is just so smart.
Yes. Yeah. But now tell me about, because I've got a somewhere. I was trying to find it this afternoon. I couldn't find it. I've got a hat, a peak cap from Saskatchewan. That's my only. I've never been there. Someone gave it to me in Vancouver last year, because I've got one from Manitoba. And I know where that one is, but I thought, well, that's not relevant. I want the Saskatchewan one. I can't find. I know it's here somewhere. I just couldn't find it. But Saskatchewan is such a cool name, for one thing.
It is.
But so you've just come back from there. You've been there recently.
Yeah, just a little over a week ago. Yeah,
right.
I was just there for a better part of a week. I got invited out to go to. There's a company called Res Energy that installs solar panel farms, wind farms all over the world, and they're installing one in Saskatchewan. And through a roundabout of connections, I ended up getting invited out there, and I got to go see them installing these massive turbines, installing the bases, putting the generators on top, stabbing the blades in, doing the whole thing. I got to stand inside one of the hubs on the ground before I got put up, and it was larger than my first apartment. These things are just huge, so massive. It was an eye-opening experience seeing how it all comes together. The other side of it was being in Saskatchewan. I've never been there. Hope Canadians don't take this the wrong way, but I've never been in a place that was this remote. It was like Saskatchewan, when you're driving, it is just flat farmland as far as the eye can see. And there's nobody around. It's just in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Because actually, I tell you what, the only reason I know the name well is it's completely unrelated, but my father trained as an RAF pilot in Saskatchewan.
Oh, wow.
In 1942. 41,
oh,
42.
Wow.
So he was stationed there, and we've still got, my brother's got the pictures, amazing photographs of him in one of those, we call them Nissen huts. I don't know if it was kind of, it was corrugated iron, a hoop of corrugated iron, but you could sort of see the front of it, but behind it was basically a mountain of snow. So they were under like 10, 12 foot of snow in the winter. Must have been, I imagine, quite tough, but it must have been an extraordinary experience to get. He was a man from a little village in Gloucestershire that had never been. I think he'd probably been to Bristol before that. Down the road, he'd never been anywhere, and he was suddenly in New York on his way to Saskatchewan to learn how to drop bombs, which is what he did. It's extraordinary. So, I've always wanted to go there, but I don't know. I mean, we've got this weird thing. We've got hundreds of photographs of snow-covered Saskatchewan with little farm buildings you can sort of make out, but also loads of holes from bombs when they were dropping real bombs, to see. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that's very irrelevant to the thing. But that was, it's quite a big, it's in the multi-megawatt region of wind farms, isn't it? So it's quite a big project.
The other thing I thought was interesting, the folks I was talking to, the project managers who've done these all over the place in Canada, they said this is the windiest area they've ever installed turbines. Wow. And it's actually created problems for them because they can't hoist things up in winds over, I can't remember what it was, like 20, meters per second or something like that. It was like there was a certain wind speed they couldn't work in. And they had to keep delaying work because the wind was too strong. And I kept saying, but that means you're building in the right place, right?
Yes.
It's like, yes, it does mean that. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, because I've seen a few of them, and I'm always wanted to go out into so we're installing a lot still in the North Sea, and that is, on a similar, if not actually, they are bigger. They're the biggest ones in the world are out at sea, but it's just the technology required to do that. The cranes and the ships that they're using are. I've seen one of the ships up in a dock, and it's just huge. And the cranes, you can imagine if you're going to lift, what is then, I don't know, hundreds of tons nacelle, the big thing on the top,
Yeah.
that high on a, it's just everything about it is on a gargantuan scale, which I'm sure. I mean, the cranes they use are mind-boggling, aren't they?
Huge. The other thing that just blew my mind was the level of precision that is required to do it, because the blades have like dozens and dozens and dozens of bolts that go around it.
Yeah.
And they're hoisting these things up, 200 meters in the air, and then they're having to stab them in with, it's like docking a space station. It's like they have to be super precise in how it goes in. I was just impressed by everything I saw. The other thing that I thought was really interesting about this specific project, it's called the Beckevar Wind Energy Project, is that it's 17% owned, I think it is, by the First Nation. So the Indigenous people of Canada are part owner in the project, which I was very impressed by, because Res Energy was working very closely with the locals to make sure that there was buy-in and people were invested in what was going on, and all the conversations that the project managers talked about with like the local farmers. There's this constant communication with the local community to make sure disruption is minimized. Everybody's on board with everything. And the fact that the First Nation owns part of this is super cool.
So I wanted to talk about that was interesting, your home battery as well, because that was the lithium iron phosphate Enphase V.
Yes.
Because I actually wrote a little thing as a note, a home battery explosion. And I went, no, that's a bad title. I mean,
that would be a very bad title.
The explosion of home battery. No, I think you have to say, but there, I mean, I feel it's become a hugely more common and an understood aspect of home energy. I get asked about it a lot now.
Yeah, me too. This past CES in Las Vegas that I went to, you could have just thrown a stone and it would have hit some random company that had some kind of modular home battery. They were everywhere.
Wow.
And so it was fascinating to see all of these batteries that are coming to market that are more modular, so that you could start small and add on to over time. It seems like there's a drive to get these more accessible for more people as fast as possible. And of course, business wants to be business, and they want to make money.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, also, I would imagine they've got a lot cheaper. I mean, I actually can't quite remember what mine cost, but it was a lot. The first one I had, which was a Tesla Powerwall. But at that time, battery costs per kilowatt hour were much higher. I mean, that cost has come down. I mean, is a lithium iron phosphate battery? I don't know enough. I mean, I know they're in cars now, but are they cheaper per kilowatt hour than? I don't know.
They are. It depends. Depends on who's. It depends, but it's in a general sense they are slightly cheaper, and then they're also have a longer lifespan. They're also slightly safer. So it's like there's all these benefits that you get from them, which is why I think you see them all over the place. And companies like CATL in China are like doing everything under the sun to make lithium iron phosphate even better and better and better. So they have batteries now that they claim are no degradation in the first like several years of use. So they're making huge advances. Yeah.
No, they are incredible. And the number of charge discharge, the number of cycles they can have now is just, that constantly seems to be going up. But the other one, because there's some things the trouble is when I watch your stuff, every now and then I'll get a little notification, you've put a new episode out, and I will then destroy that day's work because I'll just sit and watch. They're fatal. You are producing fatal episodes. Because the amount of times, my wife shouted at me because I'm meant to be cooking, and I've watched 9 episodes about. But the one I did, the one I'm intrigued by is solid state batteries, just because I've heard so much about them for so long. And I've talked to particularly in the automotive industry, so many people. Well, we're bringing out next year the BX48, which has got solid state batteries. And then you go, well, where is it?
Yes, they're perpetually feeling like they're 5 years away, constantly. It's like everybody's talking about them.
It's a little bit like nuclear fusion, but I feel they are getting a bit. I mean, they exist. I mean, people.
They do exist. Like when I put out that solid state battery video, I had a bunch of kind of pushback in the comments on. Well, they're not here yet. And one person actually commented, until I can buy one on Amazon, don't even talk about this. And what I
Right.
found really funny is I have a video coming out in a week or so, which I found a solid state battery on Amazon, bought it, and it's a little battery pack you can buy, and I reviewed
Right.
it. So it's like they are here.
You can
they
buy
do
one on Amazon.
exist. You can buy them. They're not mass market yet, but they are available.
Right. And I mean, are they noticeably higher energy density? I mean, is that the main drive, or is it that they've got a much longer life? Is that
it's in most cases when it comes to cars, it's more around the weight. It's the energy density.
Right.
So you can get a smaller battery but get the same exact range. And so there's
Right.
that's why in EVs, like with QuantumScape, that's the push towards that. But for
Yeah.
when you're talking about like this battery pack I bought on Amazon, the idea is that it's a smaller, lighter weight battery that, like, if you bought an equivalent portable battery pack, it might be twice the weight for the same amount of energy that you're
Right.
getting out of
Oh,
it.
right. So it's noticeably lighter then.
It's noticeably lighter. Like, so the company I bought it from, it's called Yoshino. The largest one they make is literally 40% lighter than a competitive product.
Wow.
But the downside right now is they're more expensive. So
Yes.
you're paying for that benefit at this point.
Right. I mean, that's been the story all along, isn't it? Because that's a thing we've noticed this year, specifically this year for the first time. I mean, and admittedly, a lot of them are Chinese, but not all of them are cars that are now cheaper to buy than petrol car. You know, similar size petrol car. They're either the same or they're a little bit cheaper, and that's never, that's always been, I think, the most legitimate, criticism of electric cars. 5 years ago was they're much more expensive to buy. But then I think the flip side of that is, and I'm sure you were the same, I never bought new cars before there were electric cars. Yes. I didn't even know you could buy new cars. I certainly never met anyone. I mean, everyone I knew had second, third, fourth hand cars. That was just normal. I mean,
yep, that was my case. It's like my first real car I bought brand new was my Tesla Model 3.
Yes.
I got it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. No, but so that is, the two things that have happened here is, one, the price of the new electric cars has gone down, but two, we now have a really big second-hand market because there are lots of cars coming onto the market that were leased by big leasing companies, 3 and 4 years ago, and they've released them onto the market, which meant the price collapsed, and everyone went, electric cars don't keep their value. Well, if you release 400,000 on the same day, there's going to be an impact, but they're going back up now. But,
I was noticing the same thing here. It's like EVs, the resale market, like the value of a Tesla held its value so well because there just wasn't a market for them. But now they're everywhere, and like EVs are everywhere. So now these cars are not holding their value like they used to. They're more like a regular car at this point, where it's like, where you drive it off the lot and half the value goes away. It's like that kind of mantra. Yeah. It's like that now is true of EVs as well, because there's this vibrant secondhand market now that's available for everybody.
I mean, I think we're not far away from the time when we'll say, that's what I want to live long enough for three things: nuclear fusion, solid state batteries, and where we call electric vehicles cars. Yes. We just say cars.
Yes, they're no longer EVs.
And then if you've got a plug-in hybrid, you go complicated car, or if you've got a petrol car, you go old-fashioned car. But the rest is just cars.
I like it. We will get there eventually. At some point.
I'm trying to keep fit enough to last long enough to say. Well, also electric flight. There's been some big steps here with, slightly long. I mean, plausible range, as in city to city, not international, or transatlantic, but certainly longer than 100 miles. That's what we're waiting for. But then. The other one I've got to talk about, because it was just genius. I've never seen it. Is the apartment heat pump, the little heat pump that you put out of your window. I'd never seen that. That is genius idea.
Isn't that cool?
So simple. Yeah.
When I saw it, it's like I know in the US, windows are very different from some areas of Europe where you have the tilt turn style windows, which is what I have here. But most of the US is the kind of like, window
sash, up and down sash window.
Yeah. So it's like when I saw this design, I was like, this is like, why weren't we doing this before? Like, why did most air conditioning units and stuff like take up the entire window? And this is designed so that it doesn't. And it's super easy to put in. And then there's a heat pump system, so it can heat and cool. It's just when I saw it, I immediately knew I had to make a video about it because it's so
Right.
unique, so different.
Because I have to say, when on my first visit to the United States, when I stayed with friends who were in Manhattan, and they had a window that you couldn't look out of because it had, but
Yes.
for a visitor, it was so exciting and romantic because I'd seen them in films. I'd never seen that in real life. So I had entirely the right. Now I look at it and go, that is so stupid. Wait a minute, that's a window. That's meant to be letting in light. But it was so exciting to have this great big, and it was on because I went to New York in August. I didn't know that was probably not a good time.
That's not a good idea.
That was very sticky. Yeah, back in the early 80s. That was, But that is so. And they're a functioning commercial company. I mean, that wasn't a prototype. They're actually making.
Those are not those are not prototypes. There's two companies. It's Midea, which is a international company, and then Gradient, which is a U.S. company, I think out of San Francisco.
Right.
They're not widely available yet because the ones that they're manufacturing right now are getting used for the New York City pilot project.
Right.
So I know people have been trying to buy them, but they're not available for order. I think Gradient has them for pre-order, so they are coming. But I think like the entire inventory of what they're making has gotten sucked up by this New York project right now.
And that was a really clever thing. I mean, I'm just going through the list of episodes I've watched recently. Viewers and listeners, if you want to know more, just tune into Matt's channel because you'll see the full episode that explains them a lot better. But the other ones that I'm interested in were the quantum dot solar panels, which I loved. That was the first time I've seen you have to struggle to explain a complex technical process, because normally you explain them so well. I go, oh, Lord, I've been trying to do this for years and you do it so clearly. But with quantum dots, there was a struggle.
You put the word quantum into anything and it's like, I don't understand. This is so complex. I don't know how to break this down.
But I think what makes me excited about, I think that's really, I'm sure you're the same. It's what kind of keeps me going is the engineering and scientific ingenuity that renewable energy and not burning stuff has created. I mean, in a sense, that's what's fascinating, apart from anything else. Forget climate change, forget political struggles or anything. But, there's people who go, I reckon we could get more than 20% out of a solar panel if we use quantum dot technology. That's when I'd get up and leave. I say, look, I'm resigning. I can't go.
That's my inspiration behind all the videos that I make is I'm inspired by just how clever we are as a species. We can do such amazing things when we put our minds to it. Yeah. And when it comes to renewable energy, there's so much like fear, uncertainty, and doubt, all the FUD that's out there. And there's like perceived negatives to solar panels and the perceived negatives to wind. And it's like there are so many people working to solve those issues that are either there are solutions that have already solved it and people just don't know about it, or there's solutions in the works, like this quantum dot solar panel or perovskites, where it's like making solar panels that'll be even cheaper than they are today or more efficient than they are today. So instead of having 20 solar panels on your roof, you may only need 10 because they're just so much more efficient. It's coming. It's just a matter of when, not if.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of work to do though.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've put ourselves in a position where we're naturally impatient because you sort of hear about these things. Or I'll meet, like in Oxford, I'll meet some scientist who's developed Perscovite. I think that was a science. There was certainly Oxford and MIT. I think was involved in that. But I'll hear about it, and then where are they? 3 years later, they're still.
Well, it's like that commenter on the solid state battery saying, "Until I can buy it on Amazon, I don't want to hear about it." It's like I get the sentiment. I understand why people are like that. It's like I'm impatient too, but at the same time, it's like there's cool stuff available today. And it's fun to look at this stuff to see where it's going. It's like, where is this stuff going to be in 5 years? Where is this stuff going to be in 10 years? Which is why I talk about some of those topics. Like quantum dots, you're not going to be able to get a quantum dot solar panel in the next few years. It's still a ways away. But it's definitely coming. It's like you can see a line of where it's going.
Yeah. And I mean, that stuff is the in a way, the best example of that was, my solar panels that I originally put on my house, which is now probably 18 years ago, were really expensive. And actually, looking back now, hopelessly inefficient. But they're still in use because they're on a primary school about 20 miles away from where I live. I gave them to our builder when we swapped panels, and he was going to put them on his house and he didn't. And I was kind of going, oh, I hope he hasn't just chucked them away. He put them up on a school, in a village not far away. So they still work, and they're allowed getting on for 20 years old. But what we replaced them with was a quarter the price and 1.5 kilowatts more power for the same number of panels.
Wow.
I mean, that was probably 12 years in between the two. I think I'm trying to think when it would have been 12 or 13. So it was quite a few years of development. And then the ones we put in our back garden were, again, much, much cheaper. That's the thing I've been arguing with builders who are building new homes in this country, is it's cheaper to put solar panels on your roof than tiles. Than the most commonly used tiles, which are the cheapest one. Per square meter, the solar panels are cheaper. I mean, I'm not counting everything else you've got to do as well.
The problem, I don't know if you have this problem in the UK, but here in the US, we have a problem with solar panels where the solar panels are getting so crazy cheap, but the installation costs, the soft costs of getting an installer to do it, have gone way up. So it's kind of like the cost of getting solar panels hasn't dropped that much in comparison to what you'd expect it to be like, which is so disappointing. We're so behind in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, from my, casual observation of homes in the United States, a lot more people have. So it's really new builds that frustrate me. The fact that there's new houses being built a couple of miles from where I live. I think one of them has one strip of solar panels, like probably 3. And you go, why even do that? And 90% of new homes don't have them, and they have terrible insulation. They have gas heating. It's just like, crying out loud.
Yeah, if you're building new, you can take all this into account when you're doing it. Like, that's why I did the house I did the way I did it. It's like I made sure that certain areas of roof were facing somewhat south to make sure I could get a lot of solar panels to get a lot of energy. Yeah. It's like, you're building it new.
I mean, have you now you've done a winter? Have you noticed? Why am I asking? I imagine you've kept quite careful track of how much energy and how much it's cost. But I mean, has it been just purely on a brutal financial level? Have your energy bills last winter been lower than, I don't know, where you were before?
Yeah, well, they're actually way more than they were before. Partially because electricity rates went up. And then the other side of it was my house is all electric, where my old house was not. I still had natural gas in my old house. So there was a higher electric bill usage here. But the one thing we're noticing so far is we're only into July now. And our electric bill, we have net energy metering, so we get credits on our account for overproduction. We have a negative electric bill of something like negative $250 or something like that right now.
Right.
So by the time we get into December, where we're actually pulling more from the grid than we're able to produce, we'll be eating through that credit balance I'm building up. So I'm expecting this next winter, we will not have an electric bill at all this next winter, where we did have one this winter because it was our first winter in the house. So we didn't have that credit built up yet. So I'm ecstatic with how this house is working out in that regard. In the next year, I think we're going to have basically a $0 electric bill for the entire year.
Right. Well, that is amazing. That is amazing. Because, I mean, we're not there by any means, but the thing that I have to remind myself is we had gas for cooking and water heating originally a long time ago. And when we got rid of that, we got rid of the gas. But the last time I filled up the tank, which was LPG, because we're not on a mains gas link. It was nearly £1,000, so say $1,400 for it to fill the tank. And I mean, so I kind of go, we do use a lot of electricity, but we don't pay £1,400 for, that's probably our annual electricity bill might be about $1,400, but that's running two electric cars and a completely electric house.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
So it's not free, but it's a lot. And because we also don't buy gasoline or petrol at all.
Yeah.
Even for my lawnmower.
I was going to say, my new house, everything's electric. The only thing that's gas, my wife still has a gasoline car. But once that one's gone, we're not replacing it with a gas car. But like, I just over July 4th weekend installed solar panels on our shed. We have a little shed in the backyard, and I installed solar panels on there and chucked a little EcoFlow battery in there to manage the energy it generates. So
Yeah.
now I'll be able to charge my electric lawnmowers, batteries, and all that kind of stuff in the shed.
It's
like a little off-grid
directly
shed.
You've got an off-grid mower. I don't have that.
Yeah, exactly. The mower is completely powered by sunshine.
Yes, that is fantastic. Well, it does. Solar does perfectly suit lawnmowers because you're not going to do lawn mowing in the winter. So
No.
But okay, the other one. Okay, so we've just filmed an episode with a portable, in very large inverted commas, wind turbine from an amazing project from Denmark, and they sent this. It's right here in my studio. One person can walk along with it, but you wouldn't want to go on a long trek with this wind turbine. It was quite comical. The whole team who normally film stuff were on the ground for hours trying to fix the wires, but we got it working, and it worked, and we did. If you had a big battery pack, you could, it would take a long time, charge a car. You could trickle charge a car with it. We managed to put in probably 5 meters range of electricity from wind turbine in my back garden. And it was the worst place to put it. It wasn't a clear, you would be better off on a hill, which we tried to. Long story short, it got me then wanting a wind turbine in my garden, which I'm never going to have. But the rooftop ones, those look really intriguing. The ones you saw, the ones where the wind goes up, basically from a building.
Yeah, there's several companies. There's like O-Wind, there's Harmony Turbines, there's like 3 or 4 companies I've talked about that all have similar things where you put them on the top of a building, and the wind that hits the building gets directed up the side of the building naturally, and then they take advantage of that kind of chaotic wind flow, like in urban environments. Super cool stuff. Like this ties back to what we talked about before of like the awesome innovations that people are coming up with. These are not going to replace offshore wind turbines. They're not going to replace what I saw in the Beckevar wind energy project, but they're more for like, I used to work downtown Boston. I could imagine seeing these on all the skyscrapers and stuff around Boston. So it's like that kind of environment is what they're meant for. And they're really, really clever, cool.
Because it is in a sense, the thing I've seen the most, if you like, sort of startup failures is in micro wind turbines. And there are so many brilliant ideas. And the one, I think a lot have come out of Denmark. Denmark's really into wind, and they were really pioneers with big wind turbines. But they've also tried things like, have you seen the one where it's essentially like a balloon that's in like a hoop balloon with a turbine, but they sail up like. I want that to work. I think they did it once, probably tore itself to bits. But so many experiments with different forms of where if you look at the sort of development of solar panels, it's gone from stuff that NASA used in space, which cost an unbelievable amount of money, to ground-based, and then slowly improved. There hasn't sort of been an offshoot of solar that's been a total disaster. I don't know about the mirrors that hit the tower. Well, no, they work.
Yes.
But whereas with wind, there's hundreds of casualties. I've seen so many different attempts to capture the wind.
That's the argument against them, is that wind works better at a large scale because it's like
up high, big.
The power is like, it's like an exponential curve on how much energy you generate by how big the surface area is of the fan of the blades. So it's like the argument is we can't ever make it efficient. And every company I've talked to that's doing it is like, that's not true. It's like, if you can make the costs work, it doesn't matter. It's not as efficient as a gigantic offshore wind turbine. It's all about the use case, and does the cost make sense for what you're going to get out of it? And so they're all very focused on addressing this specific need. And in fact, when I talked to the CEO of O-Wind, he said to me, they're being very cautious about how they talk about it in the public, because they're trying to make it extra clear that this is not something that you're going to put like in the middle of your backyard, that this is meant for a specific use case. Yeah. Because otherwise people are just going to get disappointed, and then they're going to get like torn to pieces as far as, this doesn't work. It's all BS.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Because one of one of my favorite, I've just remembered it talking to you today. One of my favorite mad ones was a farmer in Cornwall, which is naturally where that was the area where we first put onshore wind turbines. It's kind of a peninsula with a lot of wind from the Atlantic. But he had been in a field and it was incredibly windy, and he went around the other side of a low wall and sat down, and he went, "Oh." So that's how he did the story. So, but what he meant, was that the wind is hitting this wall, but he's not. So then he thought he wanted to replace hedges and walls and fences in farms with this, and they built a prototype. It was like the size of a large front door on its side, and it had spinning panels, but not one or two, like hundreds. So they're all going like that. When the wind hits it, they'll all spin.
That's clever. That is clever.
Yeah, it is really clever. And they were all driving individual small turbine, really small. They would be 5 watts. That tiny, but they're all linked together. Mm-hmm. And I just saw that and I went, "That's it. He's solved energy. That's completely it. This is probably 15 years ago. That's it. We've done it. We don't need any more coal, gas, nuclear. Forget it all. This is going to do it. We'll just have these fences all around the country."
Yeah.
I've never seen them again. Such a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is difficult. I've got what happens to old solar panels. Oh, why have I got that? I can't remember. Have you done an episode about panel recycling? Yes.
I did. Yes. I went down to Texas and visited a company called Solar Cycle, and they're recycling solar panels. And
I've heard of it is Solar Cycle.
Yeah. They have a whole bunch of really cool processes for recycling solar panels, which is my favorite thing. When somebody says on any of my videos, you can't recycle turbine blades, or you can't recycle this, or you can't do that. It's like, well, can't we? And so I look into it, and look, there's a company down here in Texas that's doing exactly what you said can't be done. So
yes,
I dove into that.
Yeah, because that's the same as the battery. I mean, all the stuff we've seen with recycling is that. I mean, it's so obvious that there's money in their piles of discarded stuff.
Yeah, you're basically panning for gold. I mean, it's like, why would you not want to try to recycle this? There's a lot of value you can extract out of it if you can figure out how to do it.
Because we went to they were very secretive about it. They let us, we just couldn't tell anyone where it was, but we went, I don't know if you saw it, we did one with Apple, with iPhones, and they recycle iPhones. And they're doing, we've heard from them since that they've now tripled the size of that plant, so that there are 3 of these massive machines because they're, what was it, 1.4 billion iPhones.
Yeah.
Because when we went in there, they were like forklift truck boxes. And you look at them and go, "Oh my God, it's just, tons of iPhones." Probably quite old ones, but you forget how many there are,
But you can see why Apple would be doing that. It's not, it's not
so
just for the PR. They can get value out of it, which is why they'd want to do it.
Yeah. No, when you see a box of probably 2.5 tons of camera lenses and chips, not like a little packet, like a massive box. It's just a huge amount. And you go, that can't all be, and they're all the little lenses out of the kind of first generation iPhones. You go, that is mind boggling how they do that. And they do strip it down to really small components.
Have you been to a battery recycling plant?
No, I haven't. I mean, I desperately want to.
You really should. I've been to a lay cycle facility, and the amount of the black mass, which is the stuff that's left over once you break it down, it was just shocking how much they are able to do. And this was just a small, not a test plant, it's an actual plant, but they're not even close to full scale. And the amount of stuff they were doing was just kind of like, whoa. And this is not even tapping the full potential of what they're trying to do.
Because that was if you think back to, when we would have first been aware of electric cars, if, say 2010, say somewhere around then, there might have been 10,000 electric cars with batteries, electric vehicles with batteries in the world. Yeah. And there's now 400 million. So there's a lot of those are two and 3 wheeled, bikes and trikes and things. But, there's a lot of batteries. We've made a lot of batteries in the last 15 years, I think it's fair to say. Yeah. And what's interesting is that all the people we've spoken to here that are setting up battery recycling, and they're currently recycling, personal computers. That's it's old phones, old laptops. That's because they're not getting quantities, as in truckloads or train loads of car batteries. They're still around. They're still being used. So,
Yep.
it does take. They have lasted long, haven't they? I'm just trying to keep an eye on the time. I've got to do nuclear fusion. Because the other day there is what's it called, a joint European tourist. There's a thing not far from me, the JET thing, which I went to see. This kind of shows how frustrated I've been about nuclear fusion for how long. When I was at school, we went on a school trip to see JET because where our school was very near. Harwell is the kind of research area. It's very much connected to Oxford University. Amazing place, incredible. A lot of battery technology coming out of it, but they've been on the cusp of successfully generating more power than they're putting in there for 50 years.
Yeah.
I think they got really close recently, but the notion, it's so huge and expensive, and when you see the project, and it is a really small one in comparison with other places. It's not that big. It's very much an experimental laboratory, but it's still big. And
what's interesting to me about fusion though is you've got I've been to Jet 2 before, just before they were going to tear it down. I got to go in and see it. But when you look at was it the ITER project, and then you've got JET and all these kind of things that are more the academic trying to prove out the concept of it, which are not meant to be actual plants. They're just kind of proving it. It's it's always 10 years away, or they've managed to get this much power out, which doesn't even come close to the power they put in, and all that kind of stuff. And then you have these private fusion companies that are springing up. You have Commonwealth Fusion Systems, First Light Fusion, General Fusion. Most of these are working in the UK actually, because the UK AEA is doing amazing stuff over there. But all of these companies are coming at fusion energy production from a very different mindset, where they're not trying to achieve, some of them are not even trying to achieve the ignition point of fusion, which is what ITER is trying to do. They're just trying to get positive electricity production out, which means they don't have to do certain things that these more academic things are trying to do. And I don't think that's something I think a lot of the public is missing, that when they see these, it's never going to happen. It's well, no, if you see what General Fusion's trying to do, or First Light's actually trying to do, they don't care about doing that. They're just trying to get positive electricity out, and they say they can do it in the next 5 years or 10 years. So it's it's much closer than people think, but it's still tantalizing. It's still out there.
Because I've just checked, we did the Helen Chesky that went to the First Light here, but that was probably 6 years ago. And I love that episode because she is, she's extraordinary, proper, clever scientist, but not kind of timid. The crew are quite frightened of Helen when they film with her. They do what they're told. You don't want to get Helen upset. But so she's quite, tough, roughy tufty. And when they were, I don't know if you ever saw that episode, but they were charging it up, and when it went off, she jumped, which I was really surprised at, because she does this. So she's going, okay, they're counting down now. Tong! And she would go, oh! She was actually, which I would have done. I'd have screamed, I'm sure, if I was there. But that was kind of, I don't know, 100 trillion volts being blasted at one moment into a tiny area. But I've not heard any more from them since then. Have you? I don't know what the latest is from First Light.
I just saw them. I've talked to them twice. A few years ago, I talked to them, and then I was just out there last August. Was it August? I've lost track of time. But I was just out there last year and spoke to them and saw where they are, and they're making big advances. They're now in the iteration for the next generation of their pilot system that they're making. So they're on schedule for all the dates that they laid out, back when you made that video. They were well, by this date, we are hoping to have this, and by this date, we're hoping to have that. They are on schedule. They're sticking to that plan. So it's they're if they're able to keep that going, their promised dates are the ballpark of when they're expecting. So by 2030, it's maybe we'll have some systems online by that point.
I want to. We must end, but I just quickly want to know about that, because I haven't seen one or tried one on Apple Vision Pro. Completely off topic.
My one thing to anybody listening to this is do not buy one. just don't. It's a dev kit at this point, but it is very impressive. Like, again, looking into the future, you can see where this stuff is heading. It's not here now because it's too expensive, but it's incredible what it can do.
Right. Because I don't actually know what they're kind of thousands of dollars. I don't remember how much.
$3,500.
Right. Yeah. That's
really expensive.
That's an expensive
This is why I say
toy.
do not buy one. Whatever you do, do not do what I did. Do not buy it.
Oh, that's very good. You go there to stop to help other people not do the thing. That's a very important. It's
incredible.
Role.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But it's just not there yet. There's not enough software. There's not enough things for people. But it's the best movie viewing experience I've ever had.
Right.
Period.
Right. No, I've heard that before. Yeah.
Watching movies on it is astonishing, but it's not $3,500 astonishing. It's
yes. But that's been great, Tori. Thank you so much for your time, and come back again soon. And if you're able to come to the Everything Electric show in Vancouver in September, first weekend in September, 6th, 7th, and 8th, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
Please do. And Matt will be there hosting really good panels about really interesting topics.
Well, thanks again for having me on.
Great stuff. Take care, Matt. Well, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. Really, it's always a joy talking to Matt. He is so erudite and he's so clever. He's clever. I just admire clever people. But I'm not putting myself down, but we definitely, we are very inspired by similar, changes and developments in technology, which is fantastic. And I love the fact that our channels kind of overlap but don't compete. I mean, please go and see and subscribe to Matt's channel. It is brilliant, and what he does is amazing. Anyway, I would ask you to tell your friends about the Fully Charged show and Everything Electric and Undecided with Matt Ferrell. That is it. Until next time, when we have another amazing guest on this podcast. As always, if you have been, thank you for watching and listening.